Well, apart from this magnificent grandstand, which provides racegoers with a wonderful racing experience and also some fine dining, the Tanya Harris marquees also play a very important role in giving the racegoer a wonderful experience, not just on race nights where over the course of the 10 years or so, thousands and thousands of people have enjoyed a wonderful night's entertainment at this particular venue. It's also provided for plenty of parties and also a number of weddings. I caught up with Tanya Harris to talk about her wonderful career as a businesswoman and also her passion for harness racing. Well, Tanya, it's great to catch up with you. Sitting here, it's like being akin to the Royal Box at Wimbledon, sitting here opposite the winning post where you always sit on a Tuesday afternoon with your many, many friends.
Yes, I do, and they're all wonderful friends. Some of them had given up coming until I met them in the streets and I said, come and sit with me. And they came back. That was Anne Hancock was one of them, and my other friends like Alex, he comes and picks me up. As a director, he doesn't have to do that, and takes me home of a night and Tuesdays and Saturdays, and it's my life, and I love every moment of it. So.
Well, Tanya, how did you feel during that 8 or 9 months period of COVID when the place was locked down only to participants and race day staff?
It was horrible to me, particularly. There was nowhere else I could go. And I just used to drive around here and see the gates all locked and the horses training, and that gave me a little bit of satisfaction.
What about the move from Victoria? You were born in Victoria to Sydney. What made that move possible?
Well, I had a stepmother who was rather cruel to my brother and I, and but we had a brother and sister from her, and we got on famously. And I just couldn't take the beltings and the things that happened to us as children. So I came up to live here in Sydney with an uncle. It was my dad's brother. He'd just come home from the war, and he was captured several times by the Germans and lived under the snow to stay alive. And he looked after me until I decided that what I wanted to do, which I wanted to do nursing. And I started doing that, but then I changed my interest. We had my other uncle, Dad's other eldest brother, had a clothing factory in Victoria. And I can remember as a very small child, my grandmother used to take me to that factory and I would sit there cutting the cottons off the garments that we made. And I just loved the sewing and all of that sort of thing. So I went to Tech myself and learnt to do designing and cutting and all that type of thing. And I got a contract with Katie's. And they were absolutely wonderful to me. I eventually devised a bandsaw machine because I was on the knitwear side of things, manufacturing them. And years ago, we only ever cut one at a time with very big scissors. And I thought, well, this is not going to make money for me. So I laid them up and I said to a gentleman, I said, come and have a look at what I want to do and what I've got in mind. So we devised a bandsaw and we cut 10 jumpers at a time. And I taught this gentleman friend of mine who had a contract with the Army, and I showed him what to do, and he then went his way doing and cutting production much better and quicker and everything for the Army. So I then produced more things for Katie's. And I used to know the gentleman that managed a lot of Katie's work. And I went overseas with him several times. And while I was over there, I would pick up different styles and bring them back and do them in different areas, make them differently, so that they weren't the same garments that I bought back. And that went on for about 15 to 20 years And then Katie started to get their manufacturing done overseas. And they said to me at the time, "You will never go without business. We will look after you because you've looked after us." Anyway, the head man, Joseph Brendan and Sam Moss, the two of them were partners, called me into their office one day, and I said to my business partner at the time, who was Reg English, and he was a chemist, and he came into the business, my business, and looked after the money side of it, and I just did the manufacturing and the organising of buying fabrics and what we could make out of them and all that type of thing. So that went on, and Mr. Brendan said to me while we were at this major meeting, "How come we're paying you $40,000 a week to manufacture this work?" I said, "Well, I did teach you how to do it, and your son-in-law has now learnt, and it went from A to B sort of thing." And I said, "But I think they were checking to see if I was getting a handout." And I wasn't. I never believed in any handouts anywhere. As a matter of fact, I could tell you a funny story about the union. And they offered, I had a car accident, a drunk run into the back of me, and many years ago. And I had to go into hospital and have my neck operated on. And it worked out very good in the end, but he said to me, "Joseph Brendan, you've been so loyal to us that we have to be loyal to you." But we didn't stay there because it went from bad to worse, less. Garments were coming from overseas and we only had to put the collar on, or we only had to do buttons and buttonholes and things like that. So that finished, and we turned to making school uniforms, which I could design myself, and we went round, and that's when we really did blossom. And Reg was a marvellous, and he was the one that more or less brought me more into the horses. My father and his brother were bookmakers in Melbourne. They had the biggest SP shop ever. They had 16 girls working on telephones. They're both passed on now, so they're not going to cut my throat or anything at the moment.
Well, Tanya, from those very sad beginnings, your career in Sydney flourished as a businesswoman, so much so that you received many awards from the government, including an OAM.
Yes, that was lovely. I didn't expect it. Apparently there was some 30 applications went in for that. So, it was just a wonderful feeling. I never asked for anything in life other than happiness and to help people. And that I got so much pleasure out of. I was in Rotary for 20 years, and I went overseas several times and built homes for the underprivileged people. It would only cost me $400 a house. So I would buy half a dozen houses while I was there, get them built and what have you. And then I just went to other things, like Reg was more interested in the horses than I was at the time. So that more or less fed me into the racing side of it. He had gallopers and I didn't like the gallopers, so I got into the trotting side of it, which my parents were into in Melbourne, and it just went from one thing to another, and I loved Harold Park. I went there every Friday night. I've only lived out here at Menangle for the last 40 years. I am 88, and I'm finding it very hard to remember what to tell you all about, but the Menangle Park, we used to come out on Tuesdays and we'd have a barbecue around the old trees, and it was just so much fun that Tuesday was our day off in the business. And we came all the way out from Sydney to Menangle for Harold Park, or Menangle Park at the time. And I just love this place down to the earth and soul of me.
Well, Tanya, how did the association with the Morris family commence, in particular with Peter?
Well, it all started, I had my horses with a trainer at Taranah, and he had decided to get out of the trotting and buy a hotel. So the only person I thought was doing well in the country with trotters and paces was Peter Morris. And I kept a good eye on him for about 12 months. So I had 5 horses with this trainer at the time, and his name was Buddy King. And he was very well known and very well liked, and very honest with me, you know. But I finished up, bought all the horses down and gave them to Peter Morris. And he was living at Fairfield at that stage. And that's when I decided to buy a property out here, which I did do on Menangle Road, and more or less have my horses trained and everything, and then got involved heavily with our directors in our Menangle and Harold Park and all that sort of thing. And I could see that Harold Park was dying. And to see that happen when it's been your industry in your heart, it is very sad.
Well, Tanya, then the association with Peter grew to the point where you became very strongly involved with his son Robbie and also his now wife Carrie Ann. It was a phone call from Robbie that certainly changed your fortunes in harness racing.
Did it ever? Oh, did it ever? He rang me up and he said, I've got a horse I'd like you to buy. And at that stage, I always went shares with Reg English, my business partner. And I thought, no, I'm going to buy this on my own. And I said to Robbie, if you can get me one partner, I'll take it. And that lovely horse was Azet Bromack. And he won me a fortune. Really, I'd have to go back in the bookwork and find out exactly how much he did win, but it was getting very close to the $100,000. So, you know, he was a beautiful horse, but unfortunately he met his disaster. I was invited to Michael Brown's wedding. I wasn't here on the night that he broke his shoulder and they had to put him down. And I thank God for that he didn't have me here to see it, because I just loved that horse, absolutely.
Well, Tanya, he won over $402,000 throughout his 170-start career, 21 wins, 42 placings. He raced in derbies, Chariots of Fire, Bohemia Crystals. He was a very honest horse and beloved also by the Morris family.
Yes, he certainly was. And I must say to this, that young Josh bought, when they had to put the horse down, he went and cut some of the hair off his tail and put it in a locket and gave it to Carrie Ann, which absolutely thrilled me to the heart, because she loved that horse so much in every way and put so much work into him. Yeah, we'd think he's finished and he'd come good again. We'd think he's finished and he'd come good again, you know, so that was Aztec. I've had a couple. I was doing a little bit of breeding for a while. I had a horse, a double Adios mare, but I didn't get a great deal of luck with her, you know, so I gave that side of it away and left it to the specialists.
Well, Tanya, as I said, every Tuesday you sit here with your many friends. Of a Saturday night you're in the main restaurant. People in the Tanya Harris marquees on a Saturday night or during functions throughout the week enjoy a wonderful racing experience in those marquees. There's always plenty of parties being held. There's been weddings. It's a wonderful tribute to what you've provided for this community.
Well, I was here nearly every day when we were rebuilding here, and I helped get lunches and things like that with Peter Chandra's husband and Chandra. And we'd get the lunches for the boys that were doing voluntary work. And I thought, gee whiz, we could do with a couple of marquees here. And knowing full well we hadn't got the money from the sale of Harold Park, so I donated the marquees to the racetrack here because we had such wonderful directors at the time.
Well, Tanya, just to wrap up, we're getting very close to race time here, the first at Club Menangle on this particular Tuesday. I think I already know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. What does the MacArthur district and this particular piece of real estate known as Club Menangle mean to you?
Oh, it's my heart and soul. Absolutely, my heart and soul. I went through a hell of a lot of stress when we were building here. People were ringing me up and abusing me. What do you know about this? What do you know about that? And I'd say, nothing. I wouldn't give them anything to pick at me at, you know. So that's what it all means to me, and the district particularly. I have never, ever in all my life struck such wonderful people helping me get in and out of my car, even shopping. So I'm very blessed to be involved with Menangle Park.
Well, Tanya, it's been a wonderful opportunity to sit down and have a chat with you. As I said in the intro, there's probably a lot of people who don't know who Tanya Harris is, but Tanya Harris OAM, thank you very much for your time, and now people do realise just who you are.
Oh, thank you very much, Michael.